Okay, so you've got leading advisory services firm PwC releasing a new 32-page Africa Energy Review report that coincides with the ongoing UN Climate Change Conference in Glasgow. My guest, Joel OMONTUEMHEN, is Africa's oil and gas leader at PwC Nigeria, and he has accepted to drill down into their new report for us. A good evening to you, sir, and thanks for coming through on the show. You are one of the authors of this report, by the way. So let's start. Is Africa at crossroads right now in terms of the global energy transition conversation?
Thank you, Bofan, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here today to discuss this. Clearly, Africa is in a crossroad. Crossroad because Africa is energy rich. We're very, very rich in fossil fuel, and the world at the moment is trying to move away from fossil fuel to renewable energy. So clearly, there is a decision that needs to be made by Africans where we want to play in the global transition. But clearly, we all know that we can't stop this movement, the global transition. The timetables have been set, agendas have been set, and Africa needs to play and ensure that the transition is a just transition for Africa.
What will it take, in your expert opinion, what will it take for Africa to transit from our current energy deficit or needs to the new horizon of 2050? President Buhari says 2060, India says 2070. That deadline and beyond, what will it take us to transit from this near ground zero where we are to that new horizon?
Okay, that's a $1 million question. And based on our research, globally, we're talking about $130 trillion for the transition to take place. In Africa, it will cost about $2.8 trillion for you to get to the net zero target of 2050. And I'm glad that you mentioned that President Buhari did commit to Nigeria doing 2060, and India is committed to 2070. So every country needs to come to the table and agree what will be realistic to do. But it's going to take a lot of commitment. It's going to take policy changes. It's going to take partnership, technical partnership with the rest of the world to achieve this target of 2050 and beyond.
So now we're coming to the brass tacks in terms of what you professionals think the critical issues are that we should focus on a medium to long-term basis, yes. Coming from where we are. Can you put them out for us, and spell them out in black and white? What do we need to do from medium to long-term?
So medium to long term, first, we need to do an assessment of where we are. So there has to be a strategy. There has to be policies. Okay, where are we as a country? Where are we as a continent? And where do we want to get to? And how do we get there? So it's not something you just wish and say 2060, 2070. There must be a strategic thinking towards that process. Now, we find out that the rest of the world is no longer funding fossil fuel. So there's a squeeze on capital of fossil fuel. Okay, so if we are going to move away from fossil fuel to renewable energies, then how do we as a continent, how do we as a country achieve that long-term goal? So Nigeria, for example, is saying this is the decade of gas, okay, because gas is allowed. We are saying this is the decade of gas. How do we move away from a reliance on oil to reliance on gas? How do we make the gas affordable for the man and the woman on the street? So those are the issues that we need to go through as a country. So it's easy to say we are committed to net zero, but the how is where the rubber hits the road. So a lot of strategic thinking is important, a lot of policy and policy formulation, and ensure that policies that are formulated are policies that can easily be implemented. That's important. And of course, like I said earlier on, money. It does take a lot of money to achieve these net zero targets.
Yes, it's going to take money, and I agree with you, $2.8 trillion for Africa. But again, you and I know that Africa's problems sometimes is not just about money, because
yes.
It's not just about money. You and I know that, so we're here. So do you think Africa leaders, policymakers, and perhaps the business sector, including advisory firms such as PwC and others, we should have our own sit down at the end of this COP26 or the UN Climate Change Conference in Glasgow, come back home, hold our own conference or summit kind of, and say, look, how do we work this out for the continent in a way that will work for us? When we look at North Africa, East, West, Southern Africa, what resources do we have? How do we work it together? Because we've tried a few things. For example, the West Africa Power Pool, you have the Southern African Power Pool, you have the East Africa Power Pool. We haven't really been able to do anything significant, even with those regional power pool projects.
So clearly, you're right, Bofan, there's a need for meetings. So if you look at India went to that conference saying we're going to achieve our targets 2070. And we know that India always copies China because China is always 10 years ahead, behind the world, and India is 10 years behind China. So, but so Africa also needs to say, this is how we're going to play the game, and this is what we require from the rest of the world. So the business owners, the government, the policymakers need to sit down in Africa and come up with their own strategies to achieving 2050 or 2060 or 2070 or whatever time frame we set for ourselves. We should not allow ourselves to be rushed by the rest of the world. Don't forget that the rest of the world, they are the heavy emitters of carbon. China, US, EU, India, they're the heavy emitters. Africa only just emits 3%. Okay, so we should not be in the same bucket as the rest of the world in terms of the timelines that we've set for ourselves. So Africa needs to meet and speak with one voice about how we're going to achieve our target and what support we require from the rest of the world to achieve this target.
Well, in terms of what I can call future forward scenarios that you folks at PwC are putting forward, tell me about this.
Okay, so we came up with 4 scenarios of how we think all of this should play out. And of course, there's a scenario that we think is most suitable for Africa. Now, scenario 1 we have is what we call assisted rush transition, in which case we are rushed like the rest of the world to transition to net zero, and that requires no support, no more fossil fuel sales, and then strong support from the rest of the world. So no more fossil fuel sales and strong support. That's the rush transition. We think that will not work. But the thing that the one we believe that will work for us is what we call the collaborative support, in which case the rest of the world supports us financially towards achieving renewable energy. Like just in that South Africa got some money out of the Glasgow conference because they've done some work. You support us financially and you allow us as Africans to still continue to sell fossil fuel. Don't you forget, Bofan, that the rest of Africa, a lot of countries in Africa are very, very dependent on the sale of fossil fuel for foreign reserve. Nigeria, for example, Angola, Ghana, they're very, very dependent on the sale of fossil fuel. So because like I said, we're not major emitters, so let us continue to export fossil fuel because we need that money to develop our economies, and then you support us financially strongly to transition gradually. So that's the scenario we come from, the scenario of no support at all, and the scenario of heavy support, a scenario of no sale of fossil fuel, and to a scenario where you continue to sell and then you get the support. So those are 4 quadrants of the scenario that we're professing, and then we believe the strong one for us, the one that works best for Africa, is where you support us strongly, and then you continue to allow Africa to export fossil fuel for the foreseeable future.
We thank you so much for your time tonight on Arise Exchange. Pedro OMONTUEMHEN, Africa's oil and gas leader at PwC Nigeria. Have a great weekend ahead. Thank you. We appreciate it.